the button.
We are recording.
Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm Glenn Kelly, the chairperson of the Parks Committee of Community Board 6. I'm joined by several of my fellow committee members. Maybe you want to just hold up your hand and wave it so people know who you are. Very good. And Angelica is going to be handling the Zoom duties for us, and she'll just make an announcement to help us navigate this should anyone want to make a comment, ask a question, change their status from attendee to panelist. Please explain how that's done.
Easiest way is to type a message in the chat if you are an attendee and want to become a panelist, or you can request it, or you can put your hand up. There's a little icon in the bottom towards the center of the screen that says raise hand, and then I can address whatever you need. If you're a panelist, you can rename yourself by hovering over your video, clicking on the three small dots on the right-hand corner of your video and clicking on rename, or if you're looking at it from a participant view, hover over your name, click on more, and then click on rename. So those are the very basic things. I think Glenn is going to be moderating, so he'll call on you to speak as needed, but otherwise, if there's some other Zoom logistical thing, you can just message me in the chat and I will help you out.
Angelica, do we have some way of snatching someone out of the attendee list and pulling them into the panelist list? I see Hildegard is sort of lurking on the attendee side, and she's supposed to be on our committee. Can you yank her over onto this side?
I just did.
Good. And I see Denise Palmer, who's our Parks Department District Manager, is over there too. We may have some questions, and we should probably have her here with us.
And probably while we're at it, we have Hannah Basio, who is our outreach coordinator on the line. Partnerships.
Hannah, come on, get over here. All right, so before we get started, I want to let everybody know that if you'll look in the chat, you will find a link to the report that I just sent out yesterday with details on our 3 parks walking tours. And we are going to follow up those walking tours with tonight's talking tour. We'll go through everything that we saw, that we learned, that we discussed, and hopefully add to it and discuss it and perhaps find solutions for some of the problems we found. So if anybody wants to do that, go ahead, grab it. I'm going to get started and just mention that this whole thing came about because Marlene Panton, one of our committee members, asked about status on Red Hook Parks and talked about maybe a walking tour just to discuss issues down in Red Hook. And it occurred to me that, you know, we've not met in person in a long time. This would be a great way to get out of doors, see each other, and take a look at some of our park assets. We've not done it in a while, so it seemed like a good idea. And I think it was a good time had by all. We didn't have a great turnout, but the people who showed up, I think, were satisfied. And I've gotten a lot of comments from the volunteers and people that we met along the way. So we're going to get started well, first I'll ask if anybody has any questions before I get started and talk about what we've discovered. Well, that's a big silent no. So I'm going to get started with our first walking tour, which was on May 1st. And
I have a comment, yes. Glenn.
Yes, please.
I thought I participated in the walking tour of St. Mary's Playground and thought it was excellent. So really appreciated the opportunity to do that. Thank you.
More accolades, they just keep pouring in. We started in Cobble Hill Park. We met a couple of volunteers and member of the Cobble Hill Association. They had concerns, and you'll see it in the report, about the number of classes that are being organized in parks. And this is something that we've seen in Carroll Park and is experienced in other parks as well, that because of the pandemic and the inability of people to hold classes, whether it be soccer practices or martial arts classes, people have shifted to outdoor spaces, parks. So we're seeing a lot of people doing that. In Carroll Park, for instance, it's not too bad because we've got a big asphalt play area, and they sort of find a corner. There's not been any squabbles over space, prime real estate or anything. But in Cobble Hill Park, it is an issue because it's so small. A lot of people want to use the grassy mound, and it's just impossible to keep the grass growing there. So I suggested to them that they might want to consider creating some sort of master schedule. While it's not required to get a parks permit for groups under 20, this is really sort of organized groups for business purposes. Somebody is doing this to make a profit for themselves to survive the pandemic, and you can't fault them for that. But we want to make sure it's done in a way that doesn't infringe upon anybody else's ability to use the park. So what I suggested was like a master schedule, figure out where it was appropriate to do this in the park, when it was appropriate to do this in the park, and what would be appropriate to do in the park. So obviously you're not going to have loud music. You're not going to do archery lessons, but some of the activities are appropriate. They've got like little kids concerts that people will Venmo the performer and then meet up there for a little half-hour class for toddlers, whatever. And I just this afternoon spoke with Kim Mayer of the Old Stone House, and the way they're dealing with it is just the way I described, that they create a sort of a number, a calendar, and they let people know that if you want to do this, you got to cooperate so that we're not overwhelming the park. They're even able to collect a permit fee, and they turn away large, like national chains, and really try to support local musicians and small businesses. So that seemed like a good solution, something that we might want to consider in Carroll Park going forward. Although this problem, when and where it is a problem, is probably going to go away because we're opening back up and people will be able to attend classes indoors. Any questions, any comments on that? The other issue in Cobble Hill Park, which we saw everywhere, is dogs on and off leash. Some areas you're not supposed to have dogs in, the planted areas, the play areas. And really all you can do is put up appropriate signage and ask people to behave responsibly. And we've seen this everywhere. And it's a bigger problem some places than other places. Probably not as big a problem in Cobble Hill Park because it's kind of small and it would be difficult to be unnoticed breaking the rules. Let's see, from there, okay, I did get a message from Liz at Cobble Hill Park, or I think it was Amanda from the Cobble Hill Association today, that the city bike expansion that was proposed is in fact being moved across Clinton Street, but they are assured that it's going to be in the street and not on the sidewalk, which was what they feared. that sidewalks are narrow there, and to put city bike on the sidewalk would be unreasonable. So it is going to be in the street, I believe on Clinton Street, right in front of the park. I think, and I will talk to them about, well, I won't have to talk to them because I'm going to send them the video. Signage. We discovered signage during our tours that will be helpful both in Carroll Park and in Cobble Hill Park to moderate behavior. Parents not supervising their children, children jumping fences, trampling plants, tearing up plantings. So hopefully the signage will make a difference. Because there had been some talk in a neighborhood forum, we thought it a good idea to go take a look at Upper Van Voorhees Park, which is on Hicks Street, between Hicks Street and the BQE. There you go, there's a picture. This has been made into an unofficial dog run, off leash. And I'm just curious. I want to kick this to Parks. I think I know the answer, but just curious if we can talk about whether it's possible to create any kind of off-leash area here.
Glenn, I can jump in here.
Please.
Well, first of all, I just want to introduce me and my team that's on the line right now. And also say thank you to Glenn and all of you guys in Community Board 6. It's really nice to get one document with all the issues lined up. And I know that takes a ton of work and all the meetings. So I hope just visiting in the field was helpful. I mean, at parks, a lot of times we have meetings about different issues, and sometimes the only way to actually figure out what's going on is getting out there in the field and looking at things. So thank you for doing that work. Yeah, I think, Glenn, we can go park by park on this. But for Upper Van Voorhees, yeah, I think, it's essentially functioning as a dog run right now, but it's not an official dog run. There is a kind of in order for a dog run to happen, before I get into the dog run issue, I just want to introduce who's on the line. My name is Davey Ives. I'm the Chief of Staff for Operations in New York City Parks in Brooklyn. So my boss is Commissioner Marty Marr, that some of you guys may know. We are based out of, our headquarters are in Prospect Park. And on the line tonight, we have our Director of Capital Projects, Christiane Dolly. Chris is responsible kind of as the liaison between our capital team and our operations team to make sure that all of our capital projects meet our specs and are kind of up to speed, in addition to handling a couple other things that get thrown at him. We also have Regional Manager Denise Palmer on the line. Denise is amazing. Denise covers the whole western side of Brooklyn. So basically from Community Board 2 down to almost Bensonhurst, through Bay Ridge down to Bensonhurst. So quite a large area with a lot of different issues, everything from big regional parks like Fort Greene to, your small neighborhood green space like Upper Van Voorhees. So, and then lastly, we have Hannah Basio on the call, who's from Partnerships for Parks. Hannah is the outreach coordinator for Community Board 6, in addition to a couple other community boards. Hannah is a great resource with Partnerships for Parks. Maybe Hannah, you can just put a link to Partnerships for Parks in the chat. They help community groups, friends of groups get involved in their local communities to help take care of parks. So if you want to do a volunteer day, cleanup, something like that, please, if you have any idea or just you're curious about it, please don't hesitate to reach out to Hannah. She can get you set up with everything needed for a volunteer day. Okay, that said, focusing in back to Upper Van Voorhees, yes, it's essentially, we understand it's essentially functioning as a dog run at this time. If in order for it to officially become a dog run, it needs 4 things. So the first thing is a group that's interested in taking care of it. We have these groups all across the city, whether it's, I think Maria Hernandez is a great group who's done a lot of work. Fort Greene has their own group, although they don't have a dog run. I'm trying to think of other ones in Community Board too. But we have a number of dog groups that help to advocate and care for the parks throughout the city. So the first thing that, yep.
I think we have a pretty good group at Diamantina Dog Run.
Yes, yep, and they've done volunteer projects as well to help spread gravel and care for the site, where Denise has been involved in now. So, so the first thing is you need an interested group that's willing to maintain the dog run. The second thing, which is kind of tricky to secure, is capital funding to renovate this area. Capital funding, we don't have a set capital budget, so any money we get for capital improvements, meaning like an investment in the park that is permanent, that's over $40,000, that comes from funding from elected officials. So in this case, I think this would be Brad Lander's district or District 39, whoever that might be next year. So this would be something. The third aspect would be overwhelming community support. So that would be maybe a letter from Community Board 6 if there's interest. And then the fourth thing would be that it's a parks approved site. So I think that's really just a discussion with Marty to see if it can work.
What was the last item, Davey?
A parks approved site. So
Right.
We're not going to put a dog run in a place like the middle of the MPPA at Carroll Park, right? Because that's not going to work how the park functions. We're not going to take out other use. We're not going to displace other uses so that we can have a different use come in.
It has to be an appropriate location.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and there was some concern, which I mentioned to the others on the tour, is that there are some established trees there, and Parks is reluctant to remove trees or even damage them with the dog run. It would require some substantial excavation. I don't recall how deep you've got to dig in order to create a drainage layer, but I'm probably a couple of feet, right?
Yeah, I think it probably depends on the tree specifically, but the most important thing to remember, and kind of the rough rule of thumb here, is whatever's happening above ground is also happening below ground in the root network. So the closer you get to the trunk of the tree, that's called the critical root zone, and you really can't really excavate in that critical root zone without jeopardizing the health of the tree. So we are the agency of trees. We do try to do everything we can to protect our trees. In the event where we are doing a project where we are taking a tree out, either for design reasons or because it's kind of towards the end of its lifespan, we still have to pay restitution costs actually to ourselves, which is a silly thing, but so we actually pay based on a formula for trees if they get removed. The concern for dog runs and trees is that the trick with dog runs here is the drainage, because whatever the dogs leave behind has to go somewhere. So if there are lots of trees in the site, it makes for a really nice setting, but it also all that dog waste will eventually get into the root system, which can negatively impact the trees.
Right. Okay. Could I ask, Davey, Chris, Hannah, and Denise to put your contact information in the chat? We'll collect this and anyone else's contacts information so that local volunteers can reach out to appropriate parks personnel.
Yeah.
We probably shouldn't be chasing Denise for questions about getting the trash cans emptied, for instance.
Cool. Chris or Hannah, or I guess Chris, Hannah, and just put your individual emails down, and someone can put mine down too.
Yeah, and perhaps just sort of a hierarchy so that we can reach out to Jamar or Mary or any of the others. Joanna pointed out something that I should acknowledge the fact that Angelica, in addition to being our excellent host tonight, is also co-chair of this committee. She and Hildegard co-chair the Environmental Protection Committee, along with my Parks Committee. So moving along, any questions, first of all, from anybody there on the dog run idea?
I threw a couple things in the chat just to keep in mind. One is access, just given traffic volumes on Atlantic. I think the need is great on this side where upper VV is, and also just the fact that as it stands now, because it's being used as a dog run, whether we like it or not, all the trees in there are at risk currently. So
that's why it seemed like a good idea to go over there and start this conversation to see if there's some way to improve conditions, legalize it, or educate people that there's an alternative 10 blocks away on this side, DiMattina, and then of course 2 across Atlantic Avenue, 1 on either side of the BQE, Brooklyn Bridge Park and Adam Yauch, I think both have an off-leash area. So as Marty has often said, Parks District 6 has more dog runs than most park districts. So, we are lucky in that regard, but it never seems to be enough, especially since so many people have acquired dogs this past year to help them through. So if there's nothing else, I'm going to move along to Carroll Park.
Gary had a question.
Oh, sorry.
The pop-up dog run on Atlantic, is that property owned by the city? I think that the parcel in the picture, I think, is city property. I don't know, Gary, if that's the one you're referencing or if there's another one.
Yeah, it's a narrow fenced-in park right up against the BQE west of Hicks Street. And it's really just a passive park. It's not well used. When Long Island College Hospital was there, visitors and staff could sit over there, have lunch, just to get a breath of fresh air, given that the BQE is right next door. But right now, Long Island College Hospital, of course, is a construction site, so it's a barrier between the community and this facility. So, but it is in fact a city-owned official park. Moving along to Carroll Park, that's where I got my parks start and was the president of that group for, I don't know, 10 or 12 years. And Gary Dolan, who is the president at this point, has joined us and met us on our park walk. And we talked about some of the issues there. And it comes down to this last year, we have been overrun. Carroll Park is one of the most heavily used parks in this district. And it has suffered mightily from just pent up demand. I mean, the kids are jumping the fences. We're finding adults and kids in areas that they were never in before. I mean, they're jumping over 4-foot fences and just trampling the plantings that we have spent 30 years to plant and maintain. So that's been very frustrating for us. So on the tour, I pointed out some fencing that we've put in, hoping to protect some of the areas. I pointed out some signs that we have put up to try to modify behavior. The asphalt ball field has become yet another unofficial dog run during the morning hours. My experience is, though, if you don't try to moderate behavior or if you don't stop this, it just expands. And I ended up seeing this down in Coffee Park and in Prospect Park. Once people are aware that a park is being used as a dog run, and you can let your dog off the leash, or you think you can, during certain hours, I think people become entitled and think that, well, they can't get there before 9 o'clock, so they're still entitled to do it at 4 o'clock or whatever. I mean, I've seen this in a couple of places. So it's important that we establish some rules, and we want to talk about this later on, about how do we get people to cooperate and share this resource. How do we all use the park without inconveniencing each other? Gary, did I miss anything that we need to cover at Carroll Park? Oh, yeah. There is something I wanted to bring up. A city bike expansion here, too. I attended a transportation committee meeting maybe a month or two ago, and discovered that the city bike stand next to Carroll Park, it's on Carroll Street, just west of Smith. There are expansion plans, and I pointed out to the DOT reps that this is a bit of an inconvenience for park staff picking up trash from Carroll Park. All the trash from Carroll Park, sort of, well, most of it ends up in one place, right inside the park where the bikes are. And the truck will pull up, and they've got to drag all the bags, branches, whatever debris there is, around all of the bikes in order to get it in the truck. If they're going to add whatever it might be, 15 or 20 bikes there, that is increasing the inconvenience. So I asked them to consider creating a gap. Just, I assume there's some way for them to put the base down and not have two of the stanchions, the bike stanchions there, so that you could pass through. They assured me that I had nothing to worry about, that they always work with the Parks Department when they're placing these next to any park. And I expect they thought that would shut me up. And I'm going to ask our parks people if that is the case. Are they cooperative in dealing with parks concerns?
Yeah, as far as City Bike, we've been working with Keith Bray's office and the City Bike team. They have an aggressive agenda where they're trying to roll out as many city bikes as possible. I think into community boards, they're trying to beef up capacity in 6 and expand into 7, community board 7. We've had a pretty good working relationship with them. There have been a couple locations where bikes have just popped up in our parks or adjacent to our parks. We're trying to push it where possible for bikes to go into the street rather than in our parks. But yeah, I think Keith has been okay coordinating city bike expansion. If there's a specific request about this, I don't know, Denise, if you know more specifically about the setup at Carroll Park and you want to speak to that, but.
So what's the best way for me to make that request on behalf of Carroll Park, that we try to consider the park workers who come to remove our trash? I know Mary Whitkey said that, you know, they'll just pick it up from another area in Carroll Park, except the area that we've been using is ideal for that. There's a large space where we've got large rolling trash bins, so all these bags can get put in there. Hopefully that helps control rats, which we'll get to in a few minutes, rather than just dumping the bags at each entrance. It makes sense to put them someplace where they'll be more secure. So I can send you an email, Davey, and ask that it be forwarded to DOT. Would that carry more weight than our reaching out to them directly?
Yeah, I think you can do that. That would be great. And like any issue in a park, if you can send that with a photo too, that would be helpful.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and all it would take would be to create like a 4-foot gap in the bank of bikes.
And I know that they're able to do like a bridge. Sometimes you see it around a tree pit where it's like a yellow piece where they can separate the docks.
You've seen that before?
Yep, yeah,
Okay.
they are able to do
All right.
that. So
Well,
whether they're willing to do it.
It's good to know that that's possible. So, yeah, Gary Dolan did weigh in and wanted me to emphasize how much damage has occurred at Carroll Park. That, I mean, branches, I mean, the kids are just tearing up the bushes and climbing bushes. I mean, they're so desperate to get outdoors and play that they're climbing bushes. It's unbelievable. So I hope that was good enough, Gary. In both Cobble Hill and Carroll Park, we have ongoing rat problems. And in the past, we've had varying degrees of success in dealing with it. I mean, during the pandemic, the park was closed. People weren't leaving trash. The restaurants were all closed. Guess what? The rat problem was reduced significantly, but of course we're opening back up again. And we want to make sure that we are in the loop with parks when it comes to events, when it comes to any kind of park work. And the reason I say this is that we have stumbled across a Parks Department movie screening in the ball field a couple of years ago, and we were never notified. We could have sent it out to our mailing list and let people in the community know. I mean, it must have been advertised someplace, but they failed to notify the volunteer group in that park, which seemed odd. Just last year, the Parks Department exterminator determined that baiting needed to be done in the Smith Street border. And rather than ask for our help in locating the holes in this planted border that, gee, my wife has worked on, I've worked on. I mean, we've got 25, 30 years invested in this garden. Well, the way Parks did it was to go in with some gas-powered weed whackers and cut everything down to the ground so that they could easily see the holes. And they just destroyed the garden for the season in order to find a couple of holes, which we could have pointed out easily. So we had a meeting with the exterminator and our park workers and asked them, just let us know. Just give us a heads up. We can go in with little flags and sort of mark the locations. So it's just a way of saying we can improve our communication with parks, that we're not caught off guard when something's happening. So a positive experience is the U incident of, when was that, 2018 or something? Some kid got sick from eating berries, and it was decided that the best way of dealing with that from a legal aspect was to remove every U bush throughout the city. And I hesitate to ask how many there were, but there were quite a few in Carroll Park. We were given a heads up. We pushed back because we thought it was ridiculous, but it happened anyway. But at least we were notified. And hopefully we will be notified before DEP finally gets around to doing their drainage project, and don't catch us 1 week before next year's spring fair. Okay, any questions? Any comments? So we moved along to. Yes.
I just have one question for Davey or any of the team. For the rat extermination, are you guys still using toxic substances for that or no?
I don't believe that we are. I think, you know, the maybe Denise, if you have more specific information on how Diana does it.
Yeah, I believe she's using dry ice, especially for that location. But I can double check with her. But I believe it's dry ice.
So Denise, is that the policy for all parks when dealing with rat infestation?
No,
Yeah,
no, but
I would-
I would have to speak to the exterminator more. But I know that she does use dry ice at some locations, and at other locations she would use the bait.
okay,
So there are varying
no.
methods.
yeah. But I
Yes.
want to know what the policy in terms of what they're using, because it is concerning if we're using toxic substances for rat extermination, you know, because we also have wildlife in the space and we don't want wildlife to be eating rats that have eaten toxic substances. So.
Right. So I know in certain areas where there's any eagles and stuff like that, they would use the dry ice and not use the poison for that particular reason.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm curious to know what the best practices are, because I would assume that in areas that are fenced off, planted areas, you could more safely put the bait down into the holes where it would be sort of out of reach of, say, birds, and not likely to draw the attention of children who might wonder what it is.
So,
And there's a fence in between.
yeah, I
But-
think just to kind of, the reason we figured that the dry ice system is kind of a very intricate one. And the reason we've devised it for this is to address, you know, to limit or prohibit us from putting, you know, any poisons in the ground or in traps, for the reason, one, we don't want kids to get it. Two, we don't want rats to ingest it. And while they have it, you know, a hawk, you know, as we're trying to grow the red hawk species in the city, to eat it and then, you know, be impacted by the poison as well. So the dry ice method is something that is a citywide standard. The exterminator comes, puts dry ice in the holes, and then I think collapses the kind of all the exit ways underground. So, and the idea behind the dry ice is that it sublimates and turns into a gas and actually asphyxiates the animals underground.
Right, but that's a fairly new practice, I think.
I think it's the last couple of years. I mean,
Right.
it's maybe the last 5-10 years. I don't know. Denise, you might know better.
And you know, obviously you don't want kids to get poisoned, but you also don't want them to get dry ice. So
Well-
you'd have to be able to really stick it into a hole, I assume.
Yeah, I mean when they're baiting, when they're doing the dry ice practice, obviously that they're on site and someone's on site supervising that, you know, no, there's not going to be any interference with the practice.
Yeah, we have some very accessible areas in Carroll Park that have rat holes, and
Mhm.
you know, you'd be
So-
able to look into the hole, but I suppose you just kind of collapse it so
Yeah.
you can't see either the bait or the dry ice.
Exactly.
Right,
At the end of the day, it just looks like, you know, all the holes are collapsed and you know,
Right.
hopefully that
All right.
network. So if you have other locations, I know that Glenn, the last time we were on site, the neighbor maybe I think on President Street was having issues with rats getting into their apartment, but
People across the street, sure.
yeah, exactly. So we can't help them, but if there are areas in the park that are known, you know, we can definitely help to get a better process to coordinate those interventions. And Denise and Libby, I mean, I think you guys at the Friends of Carroll Park are really great and are on a first name basis with almost everybody that works there. So if you're having issues or you're noticing issues, just flag it for them and they'll bring it up to the chain so that Diana, our exterminator, can take a look into it.
Right. We haven't talked to her in a while, and it's probably not a bad idea to, you know, check in like once a year and just to get a status report, I suppose. A two-way status report. We tell her, she tells us. Moving along to St. Mary's Playground, we met several of the neighbors there, and if you look at the report, you see a photo of the condition when this park was closed because of the overhead work by the MTA. It was with the understanding that the MTA would be responsible for rebuilding the park when they were finished. When that was done, we ended up with the lovely two-piece park. But of course, it's a nicer attraction, so more people come. And of course, the neighbors are more affected by it. And there are three main concerns. One, if you look at the picture of the fence between the neighbors' backyards and the park, it's rather long because there's maybe about 100 feet or more visibility into the backyards. And there's a fairly transparent mesh screen that was put up by Parks that the neighbors feel is not sufficient to afford them some privacy. So I want to talk about whether there's some way to improve that. And then the other thing is one of the neighbors is saying that children will be encouraged to, go over the little 2-foot-high fence if they've got to go to the bathroom and they pee against the fence. Well, they end up peeing right into people's backyards, and nobody would want that in their backyard. So I'm hoping we can find a solution, maybe a barrier of some sort that would at least prevent the pee from going into somebody's backyard. That would be solving two problems with one solution, hopefully. If it was some sort of hard barrier, piece of metal or whatever, that would provide a visual barrier as well as a urine barrier. And then the last thing is there are some metal slides there, 2 or 3 perhaps, and some kids delight in sitting on the slide and banging their feet on the slide, which is very loud because even though this park is right underneath the F and G line, and the backyards are right next to that F and G line, so they're used to noise, but haven't they suffered enough with the train going by? Is there some way for us to reduce the sound coming from these slides? I would imagine it would be as simple as gluing some sort of rigid foam or insulating foam on the underside of that slide to absorb the sound. It would be protected from the weather. Maybe even some of this safety surface would help to absorb the sound. Has this been encountered anywhere else? Are there any ideas to resolve this? Who wants to go first?
Do you want me to start from the top on this?
Yeah, or the bottom.
All right. Well, yeah. So St. Mary's is a beautiful park, and it is so busy. So no doubt about that. And Lena, Joanna, and Andrea, I see your comments, and thank you for bringing them to our attention. So I'll start with this project was, as you guys are all aware, the site, the overpass was under reconstruction. The site was kind of a staging area for MTA for about, I want to say 8 years, a long period of time. I don't know specifically. In that time, it was very quiet. Once we actually went and redid it, obviously it's been a hit and it's been super busy. As far as the screening on the fence, blocking out any other views, this is kind of the only screen that we have available. I don't know if any of the homeowners are on the call tonight, but any homeowners that want you are welcome to put up a fence or a barrier or shade structure on your own property too, if you think that people are looking into your property. But it is a it is a public park, and it's always been there. So I don't know what more we can do. Happy to talk to you about if there's a way to purchase another screen that parks could install. That could be another option. So that's on the windscreen and the privacy issues. I see you, Lena. Thanks for being on. Okay. As far as the garden area being used as a bathroom, I think earlier on the call I talked about capital projects where we don't get to pick the capital projects. The cost to install a bathroom, and this is going to sound crazy, is about $4 million with the current specs and just all the oversight it takes to build in New York City at the moment. This is not a price that we make up. This is what the market for contractors that can do the work have responded to. I think the more short-term possibility is to install a porta potty. Those require expense funding that would need to come from a local elected official. So if that's a desire, a porta potty could be funded. Porta potties are serviced by the company that provides them, typically either daily or weekly, depending on how much they're used. The other thing here is the garden fence. It is a low garden fence because we're trying to make parks less cagey. We're trying to make them feel like a park and not like a cage. If people are hopping that and using it as a bathroom, we understand that. I don't know how. We're not going to build a taller fence so that people can't access the garden area. I think that's just the first thing. The second thing, even if we were to do that, that would be a capital project because we don't have the abilities in-house to erect one. I think otherwise, so I will say that I'm not sure if this group has a Friends of group. I think there was talk of getting it started, but something like a porta potty is something that a Friends of group can advocate for and or fund by raising the funds themselves. Hannah Basio would be the point of contact for that. And then I think the other thing is that if the urination is still a problem, we can send officers, parks enforcement officers, to issue summons. The only thing we would need to know is just the general time of day and day of the week that these activities are taking place. I think that's most of the things. I see there are a couple items in the chat coming through.
I was just going to say that I think the urination problem is not likely to be dealt with efficiently by parks enforcement police because they're spread so thin. They're just not going to be there when this happens. It's a random event, but even if it happens once a week, it's got to be pretty annoying if it's dripping into your backyard. Could we come up with a solution? Does parks ever put any kind of like metal sheeting on the lower part of the fence? You don't need to cover the whole fence, but if you cover the first, say 3 feet, at least it stops the urine from going into the backyard and it stays in the park.
I would just add, Davey, just to point out, most of our parks don't have comfort stations, and I'm sure this issue's come up in the past at other parks, but it's not a common issue in parks. And I think the best route, rather than try to put up more fencing or is to, as community members, to approach the local electeds and and push them to fund this with expense funding so that we can put a porta potty in the park to discourage some of this stuff. Right, I mean, I don't know, Denise, do you see this problem in other parks in the district? Is this unique to St. Mary's?
It's unique in the sense that you have people that live right there and it's going into their property in that sense. But there are, other parks where people use the bathroom in the park and not at a comfort station.
Yeah, I've seen that in Carroll Park. Kids are engaging in some little soccer program or a martial arts. Gary and I saw this recently, and they were probably told by their parents or the instructors, don't go to the other end of the park to use the restroom. Just go over there, jump the fence, and they jump the fence and just pee in the planted area.
And Carroll is one that we have a comfort station, as
Exactly.
you mentioned.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult issue. It's
So I would hope that we could hear from Lena Johnson, who is one of the neighbors. I think it's her backyard that we're concerned with here. If Angelica, you could upgrade her so that we can hear
Yep.
her, because she mentioned that they put up some sort of a barrier and it was taken down. So I want to hear about that.
Before we talk about that, I'm a little bit curious about the expense funding. So I've been working on participatory budgeting with Councilmember Lander for the past 3 years, and these issues at St. Mary's come up consistently.
Right.
And we could never find a solution for the sound barrier. That seems really hard to do, but the bathroom problem, we were never told about the porta potties, and I think that would be a great thing to bring to their attention rather than a $4 million capital project. Do you have an idea of what that would cost?
I don't know what the annual cost of a porta potty is offhand, but I can get that to you and supply it.
How often is that a solution for parks?
Normally it's a temporary solution because
Right.
they tend to be very expensive for a whole year's worth of servicing or even a summer. Yeah.
Okay.
I've been typing away, so I want to thank you for allowing me some space.
This is
and
Lena,
the-
who's one of the neighbors.
The train is going by, and that's the fence that the urine shoots right through as I sit in my backyard. When the park was built, we had a meeting with parks officials, and we spoke about perhaps a composting toilet or something. There are a tremendous amount of people that use the park. There are birthday parties. I took photographs. There had to be at least 90 people in here on that rainy Saturday 2 weeks ago. And they have nowhere to use the bathroom. So they go right into that garden. I used my own money. I planted bulbs. I've been trying to get people to love the garden. If we plant here and you look at the pretty flowers, maybe you won't want to pee on them. But it's been very difficult. I'm not here all day to monitor it, but I do have a camera, and it's all day. They're going right over the fence and they're peeing. Kids want to run and play, yell and scream, make noise. I could live with that. I'm a public school principal. I live around children. I'm used to it. However, our quality of life, because of the defecating and the urinating, it's just ridiculous. We shouldn't have to live this way. There were signs that said, please keep out of the planted areas. They took the signs away. So we need the signs back.
Lena, did you put those signs up?
We put some signs as well. It said,
Okay.
please don't pee here. This is a tree. Don't pee on the tree. They take our signs down. So we're trying to help the situation, but the Parks Department, we know we're not allowed to put unofficial signs, but you got to help us out because no one's answering 311.
So for signage and this in Carroll Park too would apply to this. We do have specialty signs for certain situations. So that probably could be keep out of the garden. we have a very like standard portfolio of park signs. So Denise, can we put in a request for maybe like no, I don't know, no urination, no, something to keep people out of the garden. Now,
Yeah.
Something that says like a warning, electric fence, something?
No, but I will say the other thing here is that, a sign, obviously signs are only a sign, and that doesn't mean people are going to follow them, right?
But it backs me up. It does back me up. I say, don't you see the sign?
That's exactly. So that's
Here comes the train.
purpose of the sign. Purpose of the sign is to back someone like you up, Lena, or if we can, and PEP can spot check it, it gives our parks enforcement officers a way to issue a summons. So,
I want to be supportive and helpful and volunteer. I really do. We lock the park at night. We do our best to keep it safe. We enjoy the park. My grandson loves the park, but I just don't want to type away like a crazy person. But when you call 311 and you're putting in complaints and there's absolutely complete inaction, that's very frustrating. Very, very frustrating.
Yeah.
And that can't continue.
So we will have a cooperative effort, and I just want to suggest Parks Department has the signage. If you look through the report I created, you'll see some signs that are perfect for this, and you need probably a half a dozen in that park so that you can't miss them. And I think we need to figure out a way to put a solid barrier to stop the urine going through the fence. I don't think there's any avoiding that. And then perhaps on your end, if you could find some sort of screening material to just increase the privacy in your yard so that you can't look right through that screen. I think you're going to be better off finding that yourself, because Parks just has what they put up. That's what they have. And
Glenn, couldn't the Parks Department double and triple that screen? And wouldn't that start being more and more closed?
I'm sure they could. Is that done anywhere else, Davey?
We haven't done that anywhere else, and I don't know what that fence isn't really designed to hold that weight either in the wind. So I know it's not a super windy area, but no.
Hello. This is Ben Meskin, who lives in his playground. Just because you've never doubled the screening somewhere of that fairly flimsy privacy screen doesn't mean you shouldn't do it somewhere. It's the same situation as in his playground, which will come up next. If it was doubled or tripled, it probably would be sufficient. Do you have more of this screen in your supplies?
No, we don't. We would have to purchase it with expense funding.
Well, it seems then that there used to be something that we had in this playground, which is some type of green siding, thin, narrow strips that went through the fence and was sufficient. And we were told, oh, we don't do that anymore. We have this new thing which worked, but it obviously doesn't. That old material, when it eventually broke down, Parks would eventually come one day and put in new stuff. Didn't happen overnight, but we live with that. Do you have any plans, since this obviously isn't sufficient, and it must be probably insufficient throughout the whole city, not just here. Are there no plans to deal with this in the Parks Department?
Ben, it's a situation by situation thing that we respond to. So there's no master plan for
playground. We weren't told that. We were told we have a new technology. We have this privacy screen. It was a policy. That's what Marty Moore told me. We have a new policy. We use this material. This is what we use. So it's not like, oh, we come up with it when it arises once in a blue moon. He said, this is what we use now.
This is what we have. We can purchase. I don't know if you have another spec that you want to share with us and propose it. I'm happy to.
Well, I would rather start with you purchase a double amount for Carroll Park. For St. Mary's Playground and Ennis Playground, and install it. Maybe that will be enough to give us privacy. We are the people who live near the playground, and as involved as anyone near the playgrounds in keeping the playgrounds going. This is the right thing to do.
I think it's worth trying it. I mean, it wouldn't take much of that material to double it up and see if it's even worth considering it, because it looks so transparent that I would think you might need, you know, a triple, quadruple layer before you have any true privacy. But the only way to know that is to hang some on the fence and see if it'll work.
Maybe you can go back to the people who sold it to you and said it would be sufficient and say you were clearly wrong. Before we cancel all contracts with you, give us some more to deal with this. You are the city of New York. You order from them a great number. They probably want to keep you as a customer.
So, you know, this is not something we're going to resolve tonight, but
But it would be nice if the Parks Department could say, we're going to look into this and consider the suggestions that have been made.
well, I'm going to look into it as well and ask that the Parks Department does the same thing. If they could possibly locate some of this material or tell us where to get it, maybe we could source that or something which will improve the situation. So let's find a solution to this. My bigger concern is that we don't have urine going into Lena's backyard.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to need some sheet steel or aluminum, whatever, bolted up onto that fence. Bottom 3 feet, the length of the fence. That solves half the problem because that will be private now. And above that, you know, maybe we take the rest of this material, fold it in half, and now it's doubled above the steel sheet. So we have a possible solution there. Davey, we can do this offline.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not satisfactory. We're going to have.
This is just, guys. This is just the start. I think we have to look into it.
Yeah.
We can speak with our tradespeople to see what they have available, they can get a hold of, and what's possible. So, Glenn, we can keep the conversation up.
Okay. All right. So, with that in mind, and Lena, Ben, you know, I make you the promise that even though I'm going to be away for the summer, I'm going to push this.
Thank you.
And you know,
Thank you.
I don't think there's going to be, you know, that much difficulty in solving this problem. You know, you need a physical barrier to stop the urine, and you need a more substantial visual barrier above that to afford you some privacy. So.
And some signs to support when I say, please don't go in there. Oh, look, did you read the sign? You know, I'm pretty polite. People are usually responsive, you know.
Are those signs in stock, Denise, do you know?
We would have to order them through the sign shop because they're a specialty sign.
Right.
But I'll see how long it will take to get.
Yeah, we need 100 of them.
We'll get as many as we need.
I'm exaggerating a bit, but we could certainly use at least a dozen in Carroll Park, and you know, certainly a half a dozen in Cobble Hill Park. You know, maybe.
I would like to raise as a point of discussion, Glenn, how many we should actually have, because I, for one, am very word visually sensitive. And when I'm in a green park space, I don't want to be surrounded by an undue number of warning signs. I think there is a right number. So I wouldn't want to see every surface covered with warning.
In St. Mary's, there's a planted area on the west side of the park. The rest of it is paved, and that's the area that's up against the neighbors' backyards. And there are 2 blocks like this, so 3 signs in each of those park blocks wouldn't be unreasonable, I think. You want to make sure people notice them.
I think it's just a matter of balancing the efficacy of the signage. Is that really going to change people's behavior versus the visual impact of them? So definitely looking at the barrier solution as well.
Right.
I think, Joanne, we'll look into it, and I think, we have our signage. We have a whole sign committee that has rules on how how signs are going. I think there was a period of time where we were just putting up a sign for everything on everything. So we will have people think about it and try to put it up.
Well, and those big main park signs, there's so much information there and it's in multiple languages. I think people don't even see them. They get the name of the park and they're done. They're not going to read through. Some of it is common sense. You don't start with "Thou shalt not kill," but some of it is just so obvious that people don't even see it anymore.
Yep.
So moving along to, we had a. Hey Mac, are you still there? We had a presentation
Hello.
along the way to right across from Ennis Playground is the public place site, and we were met by Mac Thayer, who is the leader of the Gowanus Lands Group, which is campaigning to use public place as a park and not as a housing project. So he brought us up to date, and I thought he could say a few words tonight, but let's hear from him.
Hey, thanks, Glenn. Yeah, I can be real brief. I just want to tell everybody that we commissioned a professional public opinion poll on open space in Gowanus. So this was with a professional firm. It cost us $5,000, which we crowdsourced from the community. To my knowledge, this is the most definitive poll on people's opinions on open space that has ever been done in Gowanus. We also polled CB6 as well. Although I could be wrong. If other people have more information, please let me know. But it was really interesting. What we found was that people generally want more open space in Gowanus, which is probably not terribly surprising. I think it was 85 or 90% of Gowanus and CB6 residents wanted more parks in Gowanus, which I think speaks to the lack of open space in Gowanus. Currently, we know it's underserved for open space by local measurements, city measurements, and also national measurements. I think the real surprise in the poll was that the community overwhelmingly supports public place park. 90% of Gowanus residents, and the same for CB6, 90% of CB6 residents support turning public place into a park in line with the original 1974 vision for the site. An interesting corollary of our poll was that it actually was demographically weighted to reflect the diversity of Gowanus. And I think what was surprising, at least to us, is that Gowanus is actually considerably more diverse than a lot of people make it out to be, with significant Latino and Hispanic, Black and African American, and Asian and Pacific Islander residents. So we found that the public opinion was really across all demographic categories, people want public place park. So I think just to Davey's initial comment about overwhelming public support, there really is overwhelming public support in Gowanus and CB6 for public place park. So, our little group, obviously thinks to be a good idea, but it's not just us. It's actually the broader community that wants it too. And so, this is obviously germane to the rezoning proposal, which currently would seek to develop public place into housing. We asked a question in the poll about that as well. I think it was 70 or 75% of people supported a solution that would maintain public place park and locate affordable housing on other adjacent sites. So I just want to convey that there's a huge amount of public support for public place park in Gowanus and in CV6.
And if you want to find out more about that, I did put a link to gowanuslands.org in my report. Mac, is there a report on that survey that you did? you have a document that
Thanks,
you,
Glenn. We published the full poll on the website, so
on the website? Okay,
people go there and click on the park poll. You can
Right.
see the results.
okay.
Interesting. We asked a couple of questions about the rezoning too, which was interesting. So, yeah, people check it out.
I'll take a closer look. I encourage other people to do that. I want to point out, I was saying to some of the early attendees that I've been trying to read the EIS for the Gowanus zoning. And today I took a look at the open space section or chapter. 36 pages. It's mind-numbing stuff to read, very repetitive. But the takeaway is that the city or the company that created this EIS document expects a significant adverse effect on open space, mainly because of the increase in population with a not insignificant increase in the open space, but not enough for an area that is really dramatically underserved with open space. So I would encourage you to read that chapter. It's 36 pages, but I warn you, it's hard. It's very hard. In any case, moving along, we had a quick look at the potential open space on 9th Street that would connect to a public esplanade for a property being proposed on Huntington Street where it meets the canal. If that esplanade is built, it will be a dead end unless the MTA frees up the area underneath the Culver Viaduct to allow the esplanade to connect to 9th Street. So we're hoping that that can be captured at some point and make it possible to walk from 9th Street onto the Gowanus Esplanade. We then walked past the Under the Tracks playground. This had been a playground earlier. It's between 2nd Avenue and 3rd Avenue. Again, under the Culver Viaduct. The MTA has taken that back and apparently doesn't want to give it up, but perhaps one day. And you'll see in the report that there was a design made to use the old Kentile sign, which used to be part of our skyline, in that park. So take a look at that design. There's a link to it in the report. I think you'll find it interesting. And the goal then and end of our first day tour was Ennis Playground, which is the most recently renovated park in our district. And it really is just a wonderful design. It took what was a shabby little playground and made it it's lovely. If you haven't been there, I'd encourage you to go take a look at it. I reached out to the neighbors through Ben Meskin, who is still here with us, and discovered a couple of issues. One of which we already talked about was the screening, and I don't think we need to discuss that any further because it needs further research, and we don't need to go over it 2 or 3 more times. But there were some other issues regarding locked gates. Ben determined that there are 7 gates in the low fencing which is supposed to protect the planted areas. These gates are presently unlocked, which doesn't make any sense. So, of course, people go in there, they let their dogs run in there, and, well, there's room for improvement, of course. So I'd like to know if the Parks Department wants to supply locks or thinks that the community should provide locks.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn, and thanks, Ben. As far as the gates I wasn't clear about where the gates in question were, but if they're gates that are entry to the garden, we can definitely get locks, and Denise, maybe that's something we can do, just to put them on there.
So in Carroll Park, we, the Friends of Carroll Park, have provided all the locks because we're the ones that are going in there doing the gardening. We make them available to the Parks Department.
Yeah.
So you know what? I mean, at this point,
Yeah.
nothing prevents any adult from stepping over these fences. They're so low. So I can't imagine that the neighbors need these, even if they want to go in there and plant spring bulbs or something. But if that changes, Ben, if there's, people or a group that want to access those gardens, you'll ask the Parks Department for a key.
Well, yes, we would always hope that a group would emerge here that wanted to do gardening. It hasn't happened.
Right.
We always thought it would be a nice thing. But those of us who live in the playground, some of us do a little gardening in our backyards, and that's it. There's no desire to do that. But they're all there. The reason this is an issue in particular is that particularly when you walk in from 11th Street on the left, there's a small gate and it's not locked. And that runs all the way the length of the playground east towards the houses, and people put their dogs in there. They just open the dogs run through. Obviously, anyone can pick up a small dog and put them in there. But if it was locked, it would discourage that.
Absolutely.
As well as the other 6 locations. I sent Glenn a list of the locations, and here I could forward that to anyone at the Parks Department who wants to see it.
Who would be the best person to send that list to?
Yeah,
You
Glenn,
can forward that to me.
Yeah, you can send it to Denise and me. That would be great.
Okay.
The other thing, Glenn, if I may, is that there is an alley between the sanitation garage
Mhm.
and the western border of the playground, which means going towards 2nd Avenue. And there is an entrance there to the alley from the playground, and it has been locked since the playground reopened. Originally, the plan did not call for that, and we said it ought to be there, if only so it doesn't discourage people from the sanitation garage who might want to go in there. They used to go into the playground a great deal, and we, of course, want the playground to be used. And it's locked. It also is a public safety issue because there's only one way out of the playground by 11th Street. There used to be numerous ways in and out. They were eliminated, and I understand the reason that happened. But this is right there. It provides additional, egress and ingress. Also, if people are worried that kids will run out, the latch is 5 feet high. No 4-year-old will be able to open that gate. You'd have to be at least 10 or 12, and those are not the people who parents are usually worried about running out into the street.
Yeah, well, this is an example of a gate that should be unlocked. I mean,
That's correct.
There was a reason why a gate was put there.
Yes.
So unless there's some reason for that gate to be locked, we would ask that the chain and lock be taken off.
Where is this lock?
There is an alley between the sanitation garage
Understood.
and the western border, and if you enter on 11th Street, it's around 10 to 20 feet on the left, and you're going in the alley. If you walk into the
It's
playground,
an entrance to the park. It's a paved
20 feet
entrance
on your
to the
right.
park.
What's that?
It's a paved entrance to the park from that alley, but there's a locked gate.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's steps going down everything. It's like it's all set up. It was specially requested when it
It
wasn't.
doesn't make any
wasn't
sense
included.
unless there's been some complaint or a problem has arisen that we don't know about. So
Yeah,
if that's
we
not
also
the
I took
case,
a picture of that, and we can send that to you also.
okay, great.
There are two other little things, Glenn, if I may. In the very corner of the playground, behind the playground on 12th Street, there is a parking lot, we'll call it. And previously, and that abuts our backyards. Previously, there was a fencing, so some people couldn't get from the parking lot into our backyards. When the park was fixed, that fencing was removed. So now there's like an entrance. Someone could go through that parking lot, which is open most of the day on 12th Street, and get right into our backyards. Now, when I mentioned this to Glenn in his visit to the playground, he saw that there's a big piece of fencing, of which we also had a picture. I took a picture, and we can also send it to you, showing a big piece of fencing leaning against the wall of the parking lot right next to that thing. I think it was meant to be put back there, and it was forgotten about. and we can send you a picture of that also. But
I've
that should,
I've already sent that picture, Ben.
but thank you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think also didn't the parking lot get redone in the time when the park was under construction?
I think it changed hands. No, actually, no, I remember it was the same people using it. It's used by, it's not owned by them, but there's something called Min's Auto Repair Shop on 3rd Avenue, I think between 15th and 16th. They're the ones renting it.
So,
Yeah.
I had a discussion with Davey earlier, Ben, and since that's not Parks Department property, it might be best handled by the community. And Paul, I'm going to ask you if you know who owns that property, and if some contact could be made so that that fence could be redeployed. It would probably mean, you know, maybe putting 2 screws into the side of the building and attaching the other end to the fence of the park.
Glenn, we'll make our best effort. I know they're
It's
absentee
owned,
land-
it's owned by the Fall. It's still owned by the Scalas under a new name. I can
Yes,
show
and-
it to you. Okay.
Yes, Ben, and I know they're absentee ballot. We lost contact with them. They've since pretty much
But they
relocated.
have an address for this entity where they still get their tax bills.
Yep,
So-
we'll do our best to reach out. I know the property's for
fun.
sale. I know the property's for sale, so I'm not sure how much they're gonna invest in doing anything right now.
We could also probably, if the Parks Department removed it in the work, I don't want to get up and say, oh, it is no longer their responsibility. I imagine the people on the other side would be happy to let you come into their backyard. It's my next door neighbor, and install it on that side. It may not have to involve getting in touch with the owners of the backyard. If it's the
Right.
building adjoining, which is Cameo Metals, they're still there, and we would just knock on their door and they would probably say, sure, go ahead, please do. So I before we have to go all through this, I say to the Parks Department, this was something removed during your work. Is it such a big deal to get some people to reinstall some fencing?
I think that's probably not likely to happen. I'm speaking for Parks Department here, so feel free to speak for yourself. I can't imagine Parks is going to, you know, go on private property and attach something to the building. I think that's probably best done by the neighbors of the park. And it would be a simple matter, as you suggested, to go through the backyards and do this. Somebody may have to climb over the fence afterwards, but it's not that high.
No, they'd go back to the person's house. They could enter through the house and come back. I understand the practical matters, but it's kind of amazing the Parks Department does this job and leaves a big public safety gap, security gap, and then say, not a problem, we don't have anything to do with it anymore. That's sort of what you're saying, Glenn. I don't want to be too challenging, but it's kind of surprising.
No, that is kind of what I'm saying. We don't know. I don't know that, you know, Parks removed that. It makes sense. But
it was there
it certainly,
before.
it certainly wasn't part of the contract. It certainly wasn't part of the contract to attach a fence to a building on public property, on private property. And
they removed it.
And attach that same fence to
Right. Okay. So I think we can go this a number of ways, but Ben and Paul, if you can do your best to try to get a contact, and maybe Glenn too, to try to get a contact at that adjacent property. I remember they were having an issue with backing cars up into another part of the fence, and they put the car stops in the parking lot, which was great. So if you can reach out to them, we can also check our records to see if we ever encountered them too, to try to ask them to repair the fence if it is theirs. Also, Denise, if you could maybe tomorrow have someone go by and just scope it out as well to see if this is our fence or if it's the adjacent property's fence. And maybe maybe there's an easy solution, and we talk to our shops and blacksmith people, and this is not a hard fix, and all of this is easy. Maybe we talk to the building owner and they say, yeah, this is not a problem. We're having people sneak into our property and we don't like it either. So I would say,
thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Joanna, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I have another car-related concern with Ennis, which is that there's a lot of sidewalk and crosswalk parking that I've seen when I've gone down to the park in the past. And I was wondering if any of the neighbors could speak to that, whether that's still a current condition and whether we need to reach out to the NYPD to do more
Please,
enforcement.
please get every agency you can to ticket the people who do that.
Yeah, I'm
Please.
concerned about, it pushes kids out into the street as they're trying to get to the playground, and it just seems like something we need to coordinate better.
The more tickets to those people, those are bad neighbors. We've been fighting with them for years.
Okay.
Absolutely. Sanitation.
Still current, yeah.
Sanitation is also a bad actor with blocking sidewalks with plows, with equipment. And so, yeah, there's a lot of that going on and it needs to be addressed.
Okay.
Lastly, thank you for your patience. We could use some of those signs in this playground also. No
Right.
dogs, no people. We could start with 1 or 2. It can't hurt.
Yeah, I would think
Thank you very much.
I would think you would need more like 3 or 4, but
We'll take 5 or 10, but I'm willing to start with
yeah,
a few.
you need to walk through and find a sensible place to put it, and clearly not put them everywhere. So we're gonna, that's the end of our first day. So I'm gonna hopefully pick up the pace because this is taking longer than I expected. So the next day we did a walking tour of Red Hook, and I'm hoping Marlene is still here with us. Marlene?
Yes, I'm here, Glenn.
Wonderful. So I won't go through everything in the report because it's in the report. But I will ask you to clarify a couple of things. 1, Zone 7. Where is that again?
Now you're trying to be a comedian.
I'm not. I talked to Davey and
Zone 7
so that he could be prepared, and we were both like scratching our heads. Zone 7. I said, Marlene, there it is.
So Zone 7 is actually at the corner of Bay and Clinton Street. It's across from the Recreation Center. So it's actually bounded by Court Street and Clinton and Bay.
Is this where the food trucks are?
It's across the street from where the food trucks are. The food trucks usually park in front of Zone 6.
Ah, it's on the north side of Bay Street then.
Yeah, you have to get familiar with our zones, Glenn.
No. It was a couple of weeks ago, and I knew it then and forgot it since.
Yes.
I think that's Phoenix Park.
Say that again, Denise.
Phoenix Park, are you referring to?
Yeah, it's Phoenix Park, but the thing is, Denise, nobody knows. Like, to be really honest, in Red Hook, Parks knows the names. If you talk to people in the community, no one has a clue that that's Phoenix Park, right? The same way that we say Bush Clinton Playground, but many of the folks in the community, especially for the NYCHA houses, refer to it as T Park, right? So that whole Phoenix Park, the sign needs to go up. I don't think I've ever seen a sign that says Phoenix Park. One of the things Glenn and I talked about, right, that and about, I think back in 2019, I believe, I might be wrong, and Davey might be able to correct me, but Commissioner Silver came and did a tour, and at the time he had asked if we wanted to rename some of these spaces. And I had said yes, but it wasn't priority number 1. So I do think it's something that we need to talk about in terms of renaming those spaces, because the zone things just doesn't make any sense. I mean, I am familiar to some extent with the zone, but it's hard having a conversation with folks in the community and telling them about Zone 2 or Zone 5, So just to quickly, as you guys have read this, so I don't want to go into it deeply, but just whether or not we're going to be renovating Zone 7, whether Davey knows about this or even Chris, we wanted to know about that. I do believe Zone 6 is supposed to be on the renovations, and at the back of Zone 6 is Halleck Street, which Glenn has mentioned here. I think we brought that up in many community Parks Committee meetings about Halleck Street and getting DOT to turn over that property to Parks. So that's still something we're interested in. And then just getting some updates about the planned renovations for around the track. I know the last I heard was that there was still a plan to put the basketball court in over there, and whether that is still happening, because we had mentioned at the time, we didn't think it was a great idea because those handball courts are used a lot. And the handball court that's over on Coffee Street is not used often at all. I think other than folks coming from the Justice Center in the daytime, the courts, sometimes they may come and use it, but in terms of it being used regularly, it's not. That it would be better to put a basketball court over there, an additional one, than to remove handball courts that are being used by the community and by a lot of folks. If you go to Saturdays and Sundays, sometimes you can't get on the court. So just to bring that up. So just some sense, I guess, Davey and Chris, of what is going on in terms of the in terms of Zone 7, and also in terms of what's expected with the, what do you call it? The Little League baseball field that's supposed to be completed. When is that gonna happen? Just some general updates there. I don't wanna stick on that at all. And then you and I have had some conversations about the
Marlene,
compost.
do you want me to answer those questions first?
Okay,
before-
go ahead. Totally, go ahead.
All right, because there's a lot of
I'm trying to speak to you so I don't hold everybody up.
Okay, so first of all, we're going to give a full update on this, on all the Red Hook remediation work in conjunction with the EPA in June. Christian, I think we can announce the date for the meeting now. We originally had it on another date when there was another community meeting. So Christian, Dolly?
Sure. We are holding this meeting on June 15th, and that was finalized a couple hours ago. So I don't have a flyer or any information beyond that just yet. It will be an evening meeting. It will be virtual. It will be at 6:30 p.m. on June 15th. And I will try to get you guys a flyer by the end of the week.
Sounds good. So Marlene, you'll have more detail on all the properties, zones, all the zones later in June. As far as Halleck Street goes, we've heard the community proposals to create a full street through so that, truck traffic is diverted in a different way. The likelihood of it is, so right now it is city property, but it's not Parks property. In order for it to be turned over to the Parks Department, it would have to have remediation money, it would have to have capital funding money, and it would also have to have expense money to help us maintain it. All of those are not in place at the moment. I don't foresee a plan to put those in place. So, I think our goal with the Red Hook sites is to make it safe and is to address the lead in the ground and the contaminants. So that's kind of the impetus for all the funding coming into Red Hook at the moment. As far as the handball court, I think we already got roasted once before at a community meeting for saying that we were going to turn into basketball courts. So it did get turned back to handball. So it'll be brand new handball courts, but in that area of the park. As far as renaming courts and fields and properties, that is something, there's a whole process that goes through the arsenal. If that is a desire of the community, I know that people put all sorts of labels on it on Google Earth, Google Maps. But yeah, there is a formal process. So if there is a strong desire for the community to name X zone field, another name that's more, that reflects the community, that's something.
Already Phoenix Park, apparently.
Yeah.
Just no signage.
You want to walk a little bit with me when you come out?
So what about the Coffee Park meeting room? I was kind of surprised to find this being used as a storage unit, which seems a shame.
Which park?
Coffee Park, the community room, where this park committee has met in the past many years.
The building in Coffee Park has had a number of issues. It currently has electrical issues running to the building. So in order for us, and I think the building has a number of other issues as well on the inside. So in order to us to turn that into a place where people can be, it needs capital funding and needs to go through that whole process, which is just not in place at the moment.
There was some mention about lights being out. I was not aware that it was something more substantial than that.
I don't know, Marlene, if the lights got turned back on. I know that we did have some disruption with the construction right adjacent to the park in NYCHA. What NYCHA is essentially pulling out all the utilities and building a power station right next to.
So as of what is it now, 2 weeks since Glenn and I went in, there still wasn't any power.
Okay.
And that meant that the comfort station now, the bathrooms are closed because, you know, they needed power in order to have the bathrooms open. So now that space is not even being used at all.
Okay.
And it's not
Denise-
accessible to the
yeah.
public. So
Denise,
I
can
wanted
you
to get
look
some
into
update
this?
of what's going on.
Yeah, I did speak to our new SOM, Anthony, and he said that it looks like it's probably going to need like a capital project there, because I don't think it's something that they would be able to handle in-house.
This is for Denise, this is for the power that was, because what I understand is the power was cut by the contractors for NYCHA. And so they're the ones who was supposed to be responsible for putting that back on.
Right.
To me, it's a problem if you're having a situation where because of power, the bathrooms then become inaccessible. It doesn't
Right.
make any sense for that park. It's such a huge park and so many people visit. So now it's impacting a lot of park goers.
Right. Yeah, I did speak to the commissioner about it, so we're trying to come up with another solution. But right now, I'm not sure what that solution is going to be. Maybe we can get porta potties for that site, but I'm not sure. But it doesn't look like it's going to be a quick solution in terms of restoring the electrical power.
Well, if it's dependent upon the NYCHA contractors finishing their work in order to restore the park, yeah, I sympathize, and perhaps the porta potties would get us through this period until that's resolved.
So Davey, one question for me is, was Parks aware that the NYCHA folks the contractors were going to be doing this?
We were not aware that they were going to cut the power to the park. That was for sure. We went back and forth with NYCHA on several different issues, including the plans that we saw had had that pathway next to the park continuing. That's not going to be the case once it's built. And we learned that in the field, which is not a good time to learn that. But yeah, we were aware of the work, but we weren't aware of the disruptions.
Do you know if it was intentionally disconnected or was it accidentally disconnected?
I'm not sure.
Okay. I was told it was accidentally, actually.
Yeah, you would think that would give you a little leverage to get them to make repairs.
Yeah, I was told it was accidental, and then that they were supposed to be fixing it, but it hasn't been fixed. And so if we're waiting on NYCHA eventually to fix this, NYCHA's projects can go on for the rest of the year. So there is a broader conversation that needs to be had here. You know, Davey's point about capital funding for the interior of the space makes sense, yes, but that's separate from the electrical part. And I think there needs to be a broader conversation here about what exactly happened and who's responsible for restoring power, especially if it turns out it's the contractors who've made the mistake.
Yeah, it'd be nice to ascertain who screwed this up and hold their feet to the fire until they can get it repaired. If in fact it was done accidentally, if it was intentional and they had no choice in the matter, that's another matter. But
Glenn, could we ask Mike to send a letter to NYCHA to clarify this for us?
Are you suggesting that we send a letter or Parks?
No, that we,
Okay,
community, that we have Mike do it. For us tomorrow to get information
okay.
before we make a resolution to yell at them.
We'll see if that helps. And, I see James has put something in the chat here. He understands Parks gets most power from DOT feeds. If that's the case, then maybe we want to reach out to them. But let's start with asking Mike to reach out to NYCHA to try to get a better understanding of what happened and what can be done. So let's move on. We're still in Coffee Park though, and we noticed that the multi-purpose play area is pretty run down and doesn't seem to be very well utilized. So that's just something that we should be thinking of down the road. Maybe some capital project money there to get some trees in. That might even be something that can be done with participatory budgeting. And
I think, Glenn, on that MPPA, I mean, I think it was, and Marlene, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it might have been used for, distributing resources during Sandy. But, the Parks Department would be open to turning it into synthetic turf. Or, so it has a bit more playability than just an asphalt area. But again, it would be a capital project.
the asphalt is not necessarily a bad thing because there is plenty of natural turf in Coffee Park. There's enough room to kind of run around and picnic and there's pretty significant paved area as well for riding a bike or tossing a frisbee. But that's going to probably require some visioning, and we're not going to do that tonight. The last thing I've got on Red Hook is the farm and composting facility. Marlene and I were standing there looking through the fence, scratching our heads, just trying to understand what's going on there. There seems to be some controversy, some confusion, and we just want to understand who the players are and how we can just all get along.
Yeah, I think so. So right now, Red Hook Initiative operates the farm, and they are operating that under a license agreement with the Parks Department. So that is the farm aspect of it. As far as the sanitation run composting facility, I believe that the sanitation department had pulled out. I haven't heard anything new with, that being a hub for composting in the future. I think the farm is taking on some composting responsibilities, but I don't know the specifics of the ins and outs of those groups.
Is it possible that someone at Parks is more knowledgeable about history and what's going on, whether there's room for improvement and how those improvements can be made? We've got a couple of weeks before the Red Hook meeting. Maybe this can be covered then.
When you say improvements, what kind of improvements would?
Well, it seems like the operators of that space are maybe not getting along, not cooperating, and it makes it difficult for people to access like compost. And I think Marlene has some more information on this. It just seemed like there was people are working at cross purposes. Marlene, can you add anything to that?
No, I think I think that's a complex issue going on there, and Davey and I have had conversations about that. So one of the things, Davey, I would like to know is Marty had mentioned a few times that the outer perimeter of the farm is supposed to be maintained by the folks managing the farm. Is there any way we can see the contract that states that? Because we brought that issue up The MOA staff has asked about it a number of times. And I keep saying that the, in this case now it's Red Hook Initiative, it used to be Added Value, are responsible for maintaining the area right outside the fence. But then I'm asked about, you know, is it in writing? And we haven't seen anything about that. So is there a way we can get a copy of the contract?
Is the area in question not in good condition, or is it?
Exactly, it's not. I mean, we maintain it. We go in and we weed and we try to do whatever we have to do. I know also our Red Hook staff does that. And each and every time, I think Marty has said to me that that is actually supposed to be done by the farm, but they don't. And so I would love to see something in writing that actually requires them to do so. If it is supposed to be in the contract, they said.
I can check with our legal department just to make sure that's in the contract. I don't know if I can get you the contract.
Is that not a public document?
You
That
might
contract
have to
is-
submit
It'd be a public document. Can we not get a copy of it for the people in Red Hook?
You might have to submit a request for that in a formal.
Oh.
If you want to see the document, you probably have to submit a formal request for it. I can't just hand you over the legal document.
Okay.
So
but I think the important thing here is I can check to make sure that I can check in with the Red Hook farm to see that they are maintaining it or not, so that what I care about is that the space is actually being maintained if they're supposed to maintain it. So if they're not, that's an issue. And we can talk about
Well, Davey, that has never been the case, that they've never maintained it. When Added Value was there, we were taking care of that space as well as the Red Hook Park staff.
Mhm.
And now that RHI has taken over, it's the same thing. The only folks who helped maintain that space were the composting folks, and now they're gone. So we are actually going back in there. It's one of the reasons, as you know, I've asked many times for additional gates so we can have easier access into that area to maintain it. So I've been told many times that that is a requirement, that the farm was supposed to do that. So if you can look at the contract and let us know, I would love to see something in writing. If you confirm that is true, then I can put in the request to have a copy of that contract.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so there's only two other items with Coffee Park, and I would propose that Marlene, you and I try to do some online fund drive, or perhaps make a proposal if there is participatory budgeting next year to try to raise a big chunk of cash for parks to buy equipment, because that was a clear need in Red Hook that will help parks service
Glenn, can I
Red Hook and the rest of the district.
Can I understand a little bit more about this need for vehicles?
Yeah. Marlene and I were just at the pool talking about equipment and how there's never enough equipment, and trying to keep it in repair. You could always use more funding to.
Who was telling you that you needed more?
I hear it all the time. I mean, the Friends of Carroll Park has donated money to buy equipment for the Parks Department.
Yeah.
So this is.
So in terms of vehicles, I saw you put in a request for a Bobcat. We are limited. We've been trying to, we would love to buy more vehicles. Unfortunately, we are capped at the city by our fleet count. We've been trying to buy more mowers in Manhattan Beach and all across the city to help us maintain things.
Those are capped too?
Yep, all gators are capped. So it's not, ride-on mowers are capped. So it's not just we can buy whatever we want and then, and things are such. We do have the staff to maintain them. So if it's a matter of our staff going through the right protocol to get them serviced and back on track, that's another discussion. And I would love to know who you're talking with in our staff so that I can speak with them personally.
Yeah, well, it wasn't staff. It was just Marlene and I sort of kicking ideas around, and you know,
And then-
we both hear it. I couldn't point any fingers or name any names, but I know this is an ongoing issue. But let's continue this discussion going forward, because if there's some way for the community to help, then we should explore that possibility.
So can I just ask, Davey, even hand blowers, like leaf blowers and such, those things also are capped?
I think when it comes to weed whackers and I mean, maybe Denise, you might know better. About,
I don't believe there's a cap on weed whackers. We can get additional weed whackers. And if there's something that goes out of service, we also have the lawnmower shop that we can get loaner equipment for. So
Right, these are for larger equipment that have to be serviced, that is capped.
So I'd like to move along. One other thing that I discovered in coffee is this sign that guides the park workers in their responsibilities and priorities for taking care of the park. And I thought, you know, something along these lines might help guide park users and what's expected of them. Now, there is the big sign out in front of every park telling you what you can't do, but if we could kind of create a sort of a park user manual that spells out you know, how we can cooperate so that we can all use the park without infringing on, you know, others' rights, suggest activities in the park, point people to other facilities which have other amenities, might be a helpful tool that we can use through this district and tailor them to each park. That might be a good thing to connect to the community and have the community more invested in their park. So that's something that I want to continue to explore. It might help us solve some of these behavior problems that we're experiencing in all of the parks. This is another thing that we will, you know, it will be ongoing, and I hope the little network that will be created by this, tying the various park groups together, will allow us to be creative and come up with an effective product. We're going to move on to the next day because we still have some ground to cover, but on May 8th, we started at Thomas Green Park, met by Sue Wolf, and there's a link to their group. And the big issues there are the looming remediation of the Gowanus Canal and of the pool. The pool there has got to be completely dug up, removed. The ground below it needs to be cleaned. It had been a coal gasification plant 100 years ago, and there is significant contamination below that park, mostly where the pool is. So that's a big deal. This park is going to be out of commission, or half of it is going to be out of commission for quite a few years. There's talk of creating a temporary pool someplace, but those plans have not been finalized, location not finalized. We have a ways to go on that. There's a possibility that there will be access to the Department of Environmental Protection sites that have been acquired through eminent domain across Nevin Street at the canal for the building of sewage retention tanks that will reduce the amount of sewage that gets dumped into the Gowanus Canal. And there will be space on top of them that DEP says can be a passive park. So that's something to look forward to. In reading the open space chapter of the EIS for the Gowanus rezoning, they say that there's going to be significant adverse effects on open space and specifically shadowing on the pool if the Gowanus zoning goes forward as it is currently proposed, there will be large enough buildings adjacent to the park that will cast shadows onto the pool during prime summer, the summer period. So something that we should be aware of. They had a couple of other concerns. They get the same concerns as everywhere, off-leash dogs. They want to protect the trees and could use some fencing, but all of this is in the report. And I would ask our Parks Department friends to take a look through this and try to address this or be prepared to propose a solution, suggest any ideas, maybe an on-site meeting to talk about, how we can get some of these things taken care of. There may be some funding as a result of the Superfund cleanup and the renovation work that hopefully will allow for more skate features and perhaps a mural, which the Friends group there would like to see installed. So let's see. Next, I want to introduce Andrea Parker from the Gowanus Canal Conservancy. She met us there at the park and took us through Gowanus, showed us some of the work that her group does, some of the goals that they have, and some of their big ideas, which are probably best seen at their website. The link is in the report, but I'd like to ask Andrea to just say hi and add anything that's not in the report and flesh out anything I didn't say enough about.
Sure, thanks, Ben, and thanks for having this tonight. So I know it's late, I'll try to be brief. Just a couple more things about Thomas Green Park and the head of Canal site. I think, so as Glenn mentioned, National Grid is going to be remediating the pool. They are required to replace it in kind. They're not required to do the renovation that Friends of Thomas Green Park asked for, a decade ago at this point. So there's really going to need to be some city capital that goes into that park as part of the remediation. Additionally, I think we're going to need to see that there's a real commitment to building a park on top of the head of Canal site, particularly because of how it's being used in the DEIS as mitigation. And in the DEIS, it also cites that the waterfront of the head of Canal site will be active. And as you probably know, the adverse impact that Glenn is mentioning is towards active public space. All of the visioning meetings we've had with parks have said, no, we can't have any active space on top of the sewage tank. I think we need to relook at that and figure out how to get some active space. People want an amphitheater, a boat launch, stuff to do on top of it, not just a passive space. Moving on, I think the couple things that I just want to highlight about what we talked about, the Gowanus Tree Network. It's a program that I know some of you know about. We looked at a couple blocks, including Dolly's, President Street that we have some residents from here tonight. We work with 13 blocks across the sort of lowland area around the Gowanus. And we've done 33 tree bed expansions and 75 tree guards in the past couple of years. And we're continuing to sort of grow the network of local residents, taking citizen pruner classes, becoming tree stewards, and really, taking on stewardship of their block. So that's an exciting program that I think, as we continue to grow, it would be great to come back to you and kind of bring more of the stewards to meet the community board and talk more about how we can grow this program. I would note that we just installed tree guards on the trees on Nevin Street that people might remember were planted, then they all died, then they were replanted. Yeah. And we're having a stewardship day there this Saturday. So they're going to get lots of nice underplanting as well. And there's a group of neighbors that are taking care of those trees and watering them. The other big thing that I'd like to mention is the salt lot, which is as folks probably know, it's our stewardship and education site. It's also basically the only community compost site that is currently safe in the city. So Big Reuse, which operates the compost site, is being kicked off of their Queens site by the Parks Department. Lower East Side is getting kicked off their site. This site is actually owned by sanitation. And so for right now, we're safe. However, the second CSO tank is going to be sited there. So I think there's a big opportunity. And I mean, we know that the EPA just ordered the city to move forward with that tank. In addition to the compost facility, we hold all of our programs there. We have a native plant nursery where we, distribute over 4,000 plants a year. We bring school kids down, do water quality testing. There's a ton of programming and like really robust involvement with urban ecology that's going on there. And we need to make sure that we have a temporary place to be while the sewage tank construction is happening. And then there's a huge opportunity to really get the sewage tank to integrate some of the public space. There's a huge opportunity for restoration on that site, specifically salt marsh restoration. And really it really should be the sort of eco-industrial heart of Gowanus. So that's another sort of longer term thing, but as I think all these neighborhood planning processes are moving forward, I think it's a really good thing for us to be looking at right now. That's all. Oh, just one more thing. I did want to mention, we did just, folks may know we have the 6th Street Green Corridor, which is our 11 bioswales on 6th Street. We had a 5-year maintenance contract with DEP that expired. So we no longer have a current maintenance contract with DEP. We just got a grant to restart that contract and actually work with DEP to sign a long-term contract. So I will hopefully have more updates on that also as we move forward. Thanks.
Hey, what about Dolly's Garden? I know Wendy had reached out, said she wanted to say a few words. And
Wendy is here.
Is she?
I saw her earlier.
I don't see her now. We may have worn her down.
Okay, I can give the Dolly's Garden update as well.
Okay, please. I'm sure she.
So Dolly's Garden is a lovely little community garden on President Street. It's been around, Glenn, you said for like 20 years at this point?
No. It was just a vacant lot, and it was owned by HPD, and the Parks Committee became involved because HPD was taking a neighborhood park away from another group in order to develop it, some other community, I don't remember where. And they were required to find them a new home. And they offered them this home between 2 row houses. And when the neighbors got wind of that, they said, "Oh, who are these people? Hey, we could do this ourselves." And they, I gotta say, I was skeptical at first, but they pulled it off. They pulled it together and have created a nice space there. So it was nice to drop in and see that they're still active and see some old faces. Ivan, who I remember from our meetings. And there's a picture of Wendy holding a little a model showing a proposed, just sort of redesign of that space. And I guess she wanted to talk about it. So, oh, okay. So Lisa is here to talk about it?
I think so. I'm not, is it possible to let's see if she can come on the panel?
Angelica, can we pull Lisa onto the panel?
Yep, she should be able to.
She seems to be on there. Lisa, you still with us?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, yeah, sorry, I didn't, I joined late, so I was not on the panel. Yes, I think that was a pretty accurate description. We're hoping that to make the front sort of sitting area of Dolly's Park more accessible and greener, and also sort of use this chance of the rezoning and the sort of changes that are happening on our block to really you make Dolly's Park a sort of a center of community on our block that's going to be drastically changed in the next couple of years.
Right. Okay, good. Anything else?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that we're hoping that we're working with the developers that are going to be blocking off part of the park for their development. We're hoping that they will provide some financial support to some of these improvements. And so we were very happy that you were able to stop by over the weekend, and just we're trying to sort of gain steam on that direction. But yeah, I think that's it.
And the word developer reminds me that there was a concern about shadowing of the garden. If the rezoning goes through as proposed, there could be large buildings across the street that will provide some shadowing into the garden. So I know that was a concern.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly.
So before I move on to Washington Park, I just want to encourage people to take a look at the Gowanus Canal Conservancy website, linked in the report. There's a lot of information there on the EIS and, you know, big plans, and it's impressive, I must say. So we moved on to Washington Park, where we met Kim Mayer, who runs the old stone house, and they are, in my opinion, in pretty good shape. You know, they pointed out they had a couple of play features, water features that were in disrepair and were rather expensive, and it takes time to get them replaced. Davey, do you have any knowledge, or Denise, any knowledge on the those water features, the likelihood those are going to be replaced anytime in the future?
Glenn, I do not have any knowledge about that. I can talk to Kim about that further.
Okay. And then I spoke with Kim today, who told me that she has confirmed that the doggy turf dog run is in fact in procurement. So eventually there will be a state-of-the-art dog run there. I mean, there's a dog run now, but it's just sort of a dusty crushed stone dog run. This AstroTurf stuff will be, you know, a big improvement. So there's that. And let's see, anything else? I was really pleased to see that DOT has agreed to close the 4th Street cul-de-sac and you know, allow its use rather than for parking for the community. You know, it's something I hope to do on Carroll Street next to Carroll Park. Even though it is something of it's not a cul-de-sac, it's a pretty quiet street because Carroll Street doesn't continue straight through. Next up, there is the visit to Prospect Park, which if you haven't been, go and take a look at the Endale Arch. I think I put the map there. Yeah, there's a little diagram of that corner of Prospect Park, which shows where the Endale Arch is. There's 2 arches there. They were both similarly finished when they were created, and the Endale Arch has just been restored at some significant expense, but it's beautiful. I think that's walnut and maple cladding on the underside. It really is impressive. And they're rebuilding the walkway from there to Grand Army Plaza, so you can't come in that way. You got to come around and come in from the Long Meadow. This was sort of a repeat of a walk that Suzanne and Joanna and I went on, a couple of months ago. But it's good to see. We saw the new entrance at Flatbush Avenue. There hadn't been any entrances between Grand Army Plaza and I think, what is it, the zoo, right? So this was a really nicely done.
Yep, that was part of the Parks Without Borders initiative.
Right, yeah,
That entrance. So
well
it's the
done.
first- I think
We
it's the
understand
first
that the,
entrance into the park in about 100 years or so.
yeah, and Commissioner Silver was quite taken with it, I heard.
Yeah.
So they are pretty self-sufficient, I guess, fairly well funded. So they don't necessarily have the same issues as the smaller parks, but of course they do. But they're looking at sort of bigger things. They're hoping to sort of renovate that whole corner of the park with the Rose Garden and the Vale of Kashmir, and so they're taking a wider view, but you know they have the same issues with merchants in the park and class groups and all that, off-leash dogs. While we were walking through, you know, Deborah asked somebody to put their dog back on a leash, and this was, you know, certainly after the what do you call it, the long meadow off-leash hours. And as I said, people sort of feel entitled once they know it's allowed somewhere, sometime. They assume they can carry those rights forward in anywhere. That's really all I have to say on our park tour, but there is some information after this about signage and fencing, and just trying to be creative and push this forward so that we can all benefit. Yes.
Yeah, so I think on the signage, you know, we do have specialty signs as we've discussed earlier on the call. So I was telling Glenn, I really like this national park sign, but we would like the signs in the park to stick to our standard.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to suggest that we order some of these from the National Park Service, only that it's a creative sign.
Yeah.
And you want to catch people's attention and make them realize that, you know, they can behave better. And I thought that does it well enough. But your signs are fine. And if we want to get creative, maybe we do that in the park owner's manual. Any questions?
One question, if I may. In walking in this playground today, the water feature actually hadn't been turned on there, though the water fountains had. I was wondering if that's simply the date hasn't come yet, or if they should be on.
So I think, so first of all, we turn all the water fountains off, I think, starting after Labor Day, and then we start in, I think, sometime in March or late February after the last frost, turning them back on and try to have them all on by Memorial Day. As far as spray showers go, you know, today was in the 80s, and I think once it's above 80 or 80 something degrees, spray showers get turned back on. I think then the ones at Ennis are once they're on for the season and they're bollard activated. Other ones have to be turned on and off every day.
It's going to be 90 on Sunday.
So Ben, to answer your question, they should be coming on pretty soon.
Okay.
And we
Thank you.
And maybe Denise, we can just check when they're going to go.
Yeah, I'll check.
Thank you very much.
Does anyone have any comments or questions? If not, I want to ask us all to thank Angelica for hosting our meeting, and thank you to Hildegard as our co-chair, and Angelica. Since we took 2 hours and 20 minutes, I don't want to spend much time, but as I mentioned, I started reading through the EIS, and well, my brain hurts. It's very difficult reading, but I think we as a committee, Parks, Environmental Protection, should probably take a look at some of it and speak to it. Also, I will be sending out a link to the New Yorkers for Parks website. They're holding a rally, I believe, tomorrow at City Hall, or a virtual rally, I should say. And we should support their Play Fair campaign, which asks that the funding cuts to parks be restored. So we're going to want to make sure to do that. I did it today. I got really long-winded in my customized field, only to discover that I'd already done this. So they wouldn't let me do it again. So I'm hoping that you will rush out there and put your 2 cents in there and see if we can't get some funding restored so our parks will be better.
I second that, Glenn. I definitely second that.
Good, thank you. We can, unless there are any objections, let's see, who, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got 6 members. I don't recall how many members we have right now, but as I said, if we're not at quorum, we're very close to it. So I will make a motion to support the New Yorkers for Parks Play Fair campaign. Do I have a second? Was that yours? Okay, Suzanne. Any discussion on that motion?
Please do.
Thank you. All those in favor of supporting the Play Fair campaign, say aye. Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, good. I will pass that information along to Michael, try to get this put onto our next agenda so that it can be an official act of the community board, which will be pretty involved with the Gowanus zoning going forward. Maybe we can get something sent down in advance of that because we're going to need all of our bandwidth for the zoning, I think. So if there's nothing else, I would consider a motion for, Marlene, do you have your hand up?
No, I put my hand up when I voted. Aye.
Oh, okay. All right, good. Hildegard, you had your finger up. No. Okay. So thank you all for attending. I'm going to send out the link to the video, share it with the people who couldn't come. I will send some of these other links that I promised. There's a lot of information in the report if you've not gone through it. Let's keep this conversation going. I'm going to reach out, obviously, to people at Ennis and to St. Mary's and try to help Cobble Hill solve their problem by connecting them with Washington Park, which is dealing with the the vendor issue. So that's it. Thanks. Good night. Thanks for your patience. See you next time.